Names and places have been changed to protect privacy. This story is inspired by true events. In the summer of 1998, 11-year-old Tyler Brennan disappeared without a trace while on a family camping trip in the dense forests of Oregon's Cascade Mountains. Despite one of the largest searches in Oregon's history, no trace of Tyler was ever found. The case remains unsolved, becoming one of Oregon's darkest and most unsolved disappearances. For 25 years, Tyler's family lived with unresolved questions and the devastating uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their son. Then, in October of 2023, a bow hunter named Rick Connors made a discovery in the wilderness that would reignite the investigation and finally answer a mystery that had lain dormant for a quarter of a century. This is the complete story of the disappearance of Tyler Brennan, the massive search that followed, and the shocking revelation that came when his backpack was found 25 years later, filled with evidence that changed everything investigators thought they knew about that fateful summer day in 1998. Chapter 1. The last day at camp, July 15, 1998, was the third day of what was to be a week-long camping trip for the Brennan family. Michael and Linda Brennan, both 38, had brought their 3 children, Tyler, 11, his younger sister Emma, 8, and their younger brother Jake, 18 months, to their favorite campsite in the Williott National Forest, about 90 miles southeast of Portland. The family had been coming to the same site, known as Clearwater Campground, for 5 summers in a row. The campground was relatively secluded, accessible only by a narrow forest road, but it offered everything the Brennans loved: a clear mountain stream, tall Douglas fir trees, and miles of hiking trails. Tyler Brennan was an experienced outdoorsman for his age. He had been camping and hiking with the family since he was 5 and was comfortable in the wilderness. His father taught him basic survival skills, including how to use a compass, identify edible plants, and signal for help if he ever got lost. On the morning of July 15th, Tyler was eager to explore a trail he had spotted the day before. The trail, labeled the Sunset Ridge Trail, led east from the campsite to a series of rocky outcrops that offered panoramic views of the surrounding forest. According to his family, Tyler asked if he could hike the trail alone that afternoon. His parents were hesitant at first, but Tyler insisted he was old enough and experienced enough to handle the solo hike. The trail was well marked and only 2.3 miles long, ending at a lookout point and then looping back to the campsite. Linda Brennan later told investigators she was torn about the decision. Tyler was very responsible for his age, she said. He'd done part of this trail with us before, and it wasn't particularly difficult, but something inside me told me not to let him go alone. Michael Brennan, however, believed Tyler was ready for independence. He'd been asking to go on his own for months, Michael recalled. The trail was well marked, and Tyler had a whistle, a compass, and plenty of water. We agreed he could go, but he had to be back by 5 p.m. At 1:30 p.m., Tyler set out on the Sunset Ridge Trail. He was wearing a red t-shirt, khaki shorts, and sturdy hiking boots. He was carrying a blue backpack containing water, snacks, a first aid kit, a compass, and a disposable camera his parents had given him so he could document his solo adventure. The last confirmed sighting of Tyler was at 1:45 p.m. when he was seen by another camper, David Richardson, returning from the same trail. Richardson later told investigators that Tyler seemed happy and confident as he walked calmly toward the overlook. By 5:30 p.m., when Tyler had not returned, his parents began to worry. Michael walked about a half-mile along the Sunset Ridge Trail, calling out Tyler's name and listening for his whistle. When he heard no answer, he returned to the campsite and called the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office at 6:15 p.m. Deputy Sheriff Carol Stevens was the first law enforcement officer to respond. She arrived at the Clearwater Campground at 7 p.m. and immediately began organizing a search operation. By 8 p.m., 6 more deputies and a dozen volunteers had joined the search. The initial search focused on the Sunset Ridge Trail and surrounding area. Search parties continually called out Tyler's name and used whistles to indicate their presence, hoping that Tyler would come forward if he was lost and frightened. As darkness fell, the search became more difficult and dangerous. The forest was dense, with numerous ravines and rocky areas where the child could easily fall and injure himself. Deputy Stevens made the decision to suspend the search at 11 p.m. and resume at dawn. The first night was harrowing for the Brennan family. They stayed at their campsite, hoping that Tyler would find his way back. Linda later described it as the longest night of our lives. At dawn on July 16th, the search resumed with additional resources. Oregon State Police provided helicopter support, and experienced search and rescue teams arrived from Portland and Eugene. The search area was expanded to include all trails within a 5-mile radius of the campsite. Helicopter crews found no sign of Tyler from the air, despite excellent visibility and clear weather conditions. Ground crews systematically searched every trail, creek bed, and rocky outcrop in the area, but found no trace of the missing boy. By the end of the second day, more than 200 volunteers had joined the search. The case attracted media attention, and Tyler's disappearance was covered in local news stories throughout Oregon and Washington. The search continued for 8 days, becoming one of the largest missing persons searches in Oregon history. Despite the massive effort, not a single piece of evidence was found. No clothing, no gear, no footprints, no signs of a struggle. On July 23rd, after more than a week of intensive searching, the official search and rescue operation was scaled back. The case was turned over to detectives who began investigating the possibility that Tyler had been abducted rather than simply lost in the wild. Chapter 2: Expanding the Investigation. The shift from search and rescue to a criminal investigation marked a significant shift in the Tyler Brennan case. Detective Ray Martinez of the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office assumed the role of lead investigator, bringing with him 15 years of experience investigating missing persons cases. Detective Martinez's first priority was to review the timeline of Tyler's disappearance and interview anyone who had been in the area on July 15th. Clearwater Campground was relatively busy that week, with 12 other families in the area. Investigation revealed that Tyler had been seen by 3 different people during his hike. In addition to David Richardson's sighting at 1:45 p.m., a couple named Janet and Robert Mills reported seeing a boy matching Tyler's description at approximately 2:15 a.m. near the midpoint of the Sunset Ridge Trail. The most significant sighting came from a solo hiker named Gregory Walsh, who told investigators that he encountered Tyler at approximately 2:45 a.m. near the trail's overlook. Walsh reported that Tyler seemed agitated and mentioned taking pictures of the scenery. This timeline suggested that Tyler had reached his intended destination and was scheduled to begin his return journey after 3 hours. The loop trail back to the campsite was clearly marked and well maintained, making it unlikely that Tyler could have gotten lost on the return trip. Detective Martinez also investigated the possibility that Tyler had wandered off the designated trail. The area around Sunset Ridge was crisscrossed with numerous unofficial trails, many created by wildlife or previous hikers. It was possible that Tyler had taken a wrong turn or decided to explore areas off the designated trail. A troubling aspect of the investigation was the discovery that the campsite's visitor log was incomplete. Several families had stayed at the campground without registering, and some had left before investigators could interview them. This raised the possibility that someone with malicious intent could be in the area undetected. On July 30th, Detective Martinez received a call that added a new dimension to the case. A gas station attendant in nearby Sisters, Oregon, reported seeing a man buying camping supplies on the evening of July 15th who appeared nervous and agitated. The attendant, Miguel Santos, told investigators that the man was driving a dark pickup truck and asking unusual questions about remote camping areas. Santos found the man's behavior so odd that he remembered it clearly 2 weeks later. This lead prompted investigators to expand their search to include all camping areas within a 50-mile radius of the Clearwater campground. The theory was that if Tyler had been kidnapped, his abductor might have driven him to a remote location to avoid detection. FBI Special Agent Lisa Thompson joined the investigation on August 2nd, bringing federal resources and expertise in child abduction cases. Agent Thompson's involvement allowed investigators to access national databases of known offenders and coordinate with law enforcement agencies throughout the Pacific Northwest. An FBI review of the case revealed that Tyler's disappearance had several characteristics consistent with a child abduction. The lack of any physical evidence, the remoteness of the location, and the fact that Tyler was an experienced hiker unlikely to get lost, all pointed to the possibility that he had been taken. Agent Thompson ordered a thorough background check of everyone in the area at the time of Tyler's disappearance. During this process, it was discovered that among the registered campers was a man named Carl Dietrich, who had been camping alone about 2 miles from the Brennans' site. Dietrich, 34, was not charged with any crime, but investigators found his behavior during the initial search suspicious. Several volunteers reported that Dietrich showed an unusual interest in the details of Tyler's disappearance and asked numerous questions about the boys' camping plans. When investigators attempted to interview Dietrich more closely, they discovered that he had left the area immediately after the search was suspended and had provided an incorrect address when checking into the campsite. This discovery made him a suspect in Tyler's disappearance. The search for Carl Dietrich led investigators to California, where they discovered that he had mental health issues and was being treated for depression and anxiety. While these conditions did not make him a suspect, they raised questions about his behavior during the camping trip. Dietrich was found in San Francisco on August 18th and agreed to be interviewed by investigators. He denied any involvement in Tyler's disappearance, but admitted to being in the area at the time. He claimed he provided a false address because he was behind on child support and did not want to be tracked down by authorities. A polygraph test on Dietrich was inconclusive, neither exonerating him nor confirming his involvement in the case. Without any physical evidence linking him to Tyler's disappearance, investigators were unable to justify an arrest. As summer turned to fall, the investigation began to lose momentum. Despite hundreds of interviews, extensive forensic analysis, and coordination with multiple law enforcement agencies, no conclusive evidence was found. The case remained active, but as the months passed with no new leads, it gradually moved from the foreground to the cold case files. The Brennan family continued to hope for answers, but the reality was that Tyler's disappearance had become one of Oregon's most baffling unsolved mysteries. Chapter 3. Years of Searching. The years following Tyler Brennan's disappearance were marked by persistent efforts by both law enforcement and the Brennan family to keep the case alive. Despite the lack of new leads, the investigation was never officially closed, and Detective Martinez continued to pursue any potential connections to similar cases in the area. In 2001, 3 years after Tyler's disappearance, the case gained new notoriety when the skeleton of a young boy was discovered in the Cascade Mountains, about 40 miles from the Clearwater campground. It was initially thought that the remains might be Tyler's, but dental records quickly ruled out that possibility. The skeleton belonged to another child who had been missing for more than a decade. The false alarm was emotionally devastating for the Brennan family, who had allowed themselves to hope for closure. Linda Brennan later described the experience as reliving the worst day of our lives. In 2003, the case was featured on the television show America's Most Wanted, leading to hundreds of tips from viewers across the country. Most of these reports turned out to be false leads, but investigators dutifully followed each one, hoping for a breakthrough that might solve the case. One promising lead came from a witness in Montana who reported seeing a boy resembling Tyler at a gas station in 1998. The witness claimed the boy appeared upset and was with an older man who matched the description of Carl Dietrich. However, further investigation revealed that the witness had confused the date, and the sighting actually occurred 2 years after Tyler's disappearance. The Brennan family became active advocates for missing children, working with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to raise awareness of Tyler's case and others like it. They organized annual searches in the Clearwater campground area, gathering volunteers who remained hopeful that physical evidence might eventually be found. In 2008, 10 years after Tyler's disappearance, the case was turned over to Detective Sarah Kim, who had recently joined the Dershowitz County Sheriff's Office. Detective Kim brought a fresh perspective to the investigation and decided to re-examine all of the evidence using new forensic techniques. One of Detective Kim's first steps was to digitize Tyler's case file and enter it into updated databases that could cross-reference similar cases across the country. This process revealed potential links to several other disappearances in the Pacific Northwest in the late 1990s. The most intriguing connection was that of 9-year-old Danny Rodriguez, who disappeared from a campsite in Washington state in 1997. Like Tyler, Danny was an experienced young outdoorsman who vanished without a trace while on a family camping trip. The similarities between the cases were striking enough to warrant a joint investigation. Detective Kim also ordered new DNA testing on several pieces of evidence collected during the original investigation. Advances in forensic science made it possible to extract DNA from smaller samples, revealing genetic material that may have been missed in '98. Unfortunately, the new DNA testing yielded no significant results. The evidence samples were too damaged by time and environmental factors to yield useful genetic profiles. In 2013, the case received renewed attention when a hiker discovered a child's sneaker in the mountains near the Clearwater campground. The sneaker was the correct size and type to match Tyler's, but it was too worn to allow a positive identification. The discovery prompted another organized search of the area, with dozens of volunteers spending the weekend combing the woods for more evidence. Despite their efforts, nothing else was found, and the sneaker's connection to Tyler's case remained unproven. By 2015, the case had been cold for nearly 2 decades. Detective Kim had moved on to other assignments, and the investigation had essentially stalled. The Brennan family remained hopeful, but they were slowly coming to terms with the fact that they might never know what happened to Tyler. Michael and Linda Brennan divorced in 2016, with Linda later explaining that the stress of Tyler's disappearance had put too much strain on their marriage. "We both dealt with grief in different ways," she said. "After 18 years, we couldn't bridge that gap." The case was officially transferred to the Cold Case Unit in 2018, marking the 20th anniversary of Tyler's disappearance. Although the case remained technically active, it received minimal attention from investigators who were focused on more recent crimes. During this period, several amateur investigators and true crime enthusiasts began researching Tyler's case, creating websites and forums dedicated to analyzing evidence and posting theories about what might have happened. Some of these theories were well-researched and plausible, while others were based on speculation and conspiracy theories. One persistent theory suggested that Tyler had been taken by a serial killer active in the Pacific Northwest in the 1990s. Proponents of this theory pointed to similarities between Tyler's case and several other child disappearances in the region, arguing that the lack of physical evidence was consistent with an experienced predator. Another theory suggested that Tyler had accidentally fallen into a deep ravine or cave, and that his body was never found because searchers were looking in the wrong places. This theory was supported by the fact that the terrain around the Clearwater campground was extremely rugged and contained numerous geological features that could have hidden the body. Despite the various theories and continued interest in the case, no concrete evidence has ever emerged to support any specific explanation for Tyler's disappearance. As the 25th anniversary of the incident in 2023 approaches, it seems likely that the fate of Tyler Brennan will remain one of Oregon's most enduring mysteries. Chapter 4. Discovery. October 14, 2023 began as an ordinary fall day for bow hunter Rick Connors. The 52-year-old machinist from Bend, Oregon, had been hunting the Cascade Mountains for more than 30 years and knew the wilderness around Clearwater campground better than anyone. Connors was tracking a large buck through dense woods about 4 miles northeast of the campground when he noticed something unusual. In a small clearing, partially obscured by fallen logs and thick underbrush, he saw what looked like a piece of faded blue fabric. Connors initially thought the fabric might be from a discarded tarp or camping gear. However, as he moved closer for a closer inspection, he realized he was looking at a backpack that had been hidden by years of forest debris and vegetation. The backpack was in excellent condition, considering it had been exposed to the elements for many years. The fabric was faded and stained, but the structure of the backpack was intact. Importantly, the backpack was clearly designed for a child, not an adult. Connors carefully examined the area around the backpack, not touching anything. His hunting experience had taught him to be aware of his surroundings, and he immediately realized that this could be important evidence in a criminal case. Using his cell phone, Connors called the Dashuitz County Sheriff's Office and reported his find. The dispatcher, recognizing the potential significance of finding a child's backpack in a remote location, immediately notified Detective Martinez, who returned to the Tyler Brennan case as a cold case investigator. Detective Martinez arrived on scene within 2 hours, accompanied by forensic and street technicians. The location where the backpack was found was extremely secluded, accessible only after several miles of difficult terrain. The backpack's position indicated that it had been intentionally hidden, not simply dropped or lost. It was nestled in a small depression and partially covered by branches and leaves, although natural decomposition and weather had exposed it over time. Before moving the backpack, investigators carefully documented the scene with photographs and measurements. They also conducted a preliminary search of the surrounding area, looking for any additional evidence that might be related to the discovery. The backpack was carefully transported to the sheriff's office, where it was opened under controlled conditions. What investigators found inside was the first concrete evidence in the Tyler Brennan case in 25 years. The backpack contained several items that matched what Tyler was carrying on the day he disappeared. There was a plastic water bottle, still partially full, but with the contents badly decomposed. The first aid kit, although some of the items were deteriorated, was still recognizable. Most importantly, the backpack contained a compass and a disposable camera, both items that Tyler's parents confirmed he was carrying on July 15, 1998. The compass was engraved with Tyler's initials, providing irrefutable proof that the backpack was indeed his. The disposable camera was the most intriguing piece of evidence. Despite being exposed to moisture and extreme temperatures for 25 years, the camera appeared to be undamaged. If the film inside had survived, it could provide vital clues to Tyler's final hours. The camera was immediately sent to the FBI crime lab in Quantico, Virginia, where technicians would attempt to develop the film using advanced techniques designed to recover images from badly decomposed materials. While awaiting the results of the film processing, investigators began a thorough analysis of the backpack's location. The site where it was found was approximately 3 2 miles from the Sunset Ridge Trail, an area that had not been searched during the initial investigation. The location was notable because it was not accessible from any designated trail. Anyone who reached the location would have had to traverse extremely difficult terrain, indicating either that Tyler was seriously lost or that someone else had taken him there. Investigators also noted that the backpack's location was relatively close to an old logging road that had been abandoned in the 1980s. Although the road was overgrown and impassable to regular vehicles, it could have been used by someone on a 4-wheel drive or ATV. On October 20th, 6 days after the backpack was found, the FBI lab reported preliminary results from processing the film. Despite the extreme age and decomposition of the film, technicians were able to recover partial images from several frames. The resulting photographs showed scenes consistent with Tyler's planned hike on July 15, 1998. Several of the images showed views from the Sunset Ridge Trail, including recognizable landmarks that confirmed Tyler had reached his intended destination. However, the most significant images were from the end of the film. These images showed a completely different location, a dense forested area that seemed to match the area where the backpack was found. The last photograph was especially disturbing. It showed adult hands reaching toward the camera. The implications of these images were immediately clear to investigators. Tyler had not simply gotten lost on his hike. Someone was with him in his final moments, and that person was close enough to take a photograph. The discovery of Tyler's backpack and the evidence it contained marked a turning point in the investigation. For the first time in 25 years, investigators had concrete evidence of what had happened to Tyler Brennan. But the evidence also raised new and disturbing questions about the circumstances of his disappearance. Chapter 5: Uncovering the Truth. Recovering the images from Tyler Brennan's camera transformed the investigation from a cold case into an active murder investigation. Detective Martinez, now working with a full team of investigators, began the painstaking process of analyzing every detail of the photographs and comparing them to known evidence from 1998. The final photograph, showing adult hands reaching toward the camera, was subjected to extensive forensic analysis. Although the image quality was poor due to film degradation, experts were able to determine that the hands belonged to an adult male based on their size and structure. More importantly, the photograph showed a distinctive scar on the man's left hand. The scar appeared to be from an old injury, possibly a cut or burn, and formed a recognizable pattern that could be used to identify the individual. Investigators immediately began reviewing all persons of interest from the original investigation, looking for anyone who might have a distinctive scar on their left hand. This process led them back to Carl Dietrich, a suspicious tourist who had been questioned in 1998. When investigators found Dietrich's 1998 interview files, they discovered that he had indeed been photographed and fingerprinted during the investigation. What's more, the photographs clearly showed a scar on his left arm that matched the pattern seen in the last photograph of Tyler. Dietrich, now 59 years old, was found in Nevada, where he had been living under an assumed name. When investigators approached him in November 2023, he initially denied any involvement in Tyler's disappearance, just as he had 25 years earlier. However, when confronted with Tyler's camera photo, Dietrich's demeanor changed dramatically. After consulting with an attorney, he agreed to testify about the events of July 15, 1998. Dietrich's confession revealed a tragic sequence of events that began with what he called a chance encounter. According to his statement, he was walking alone in the woods when he encountered Tyler, who had wandered off the marked trail while attempting to photograph wildlife. Dietrich claimed that Tyler was lost and frightened, and that he initially intended to help the boy find his way back to the campsite. However, as they walked together, Dietrich said he became overwhelmed with what he described as inappropriate thoughts about the child. The confession revealed that Dietrich had a history of struggling with pedophilic urges, something that had never been discovered during the initial investigation. He had never acted on these urges before, but the isolated environment and opportunity proved too tempting for him to resist. According to Dietrich's statement, he led Tyler deeper into the woods, claiming to know a shortcut back to the campsite. When Tyler became suspicious and tried to leave, Dietrich stopped him, which eventually led to a physical fight. Dietrich claimed that Tyler's death was accidental, the result of a fall during the struggle. However, forensic examination suggested otherwise. Analysis of Tyler's remains, which were carefully removed from the area where his backpack was found, revealed signs of blunt force trauma consistent with deliberate violence. The investigation also revealed that Dietrich had returned to the area several times over the years, ostensibly to hunt, but likely to ensure that Tyler's body remained hidden. This would explain why the backpack was found in such a remote location. Dietrich had moved it there to reduce the likelihood of detection. The breakthrough in the case also led to developments in other investigations. DNA evidence collected from Tyler's remains was compared to unsolved cases across the country, leading to potential links to other child disappearances in the 1990s. Most importantly, investigators found evidence linking Dietrich to the disappearance of Danny Rodriguez, a 9-year-old boy who went missing from a campsite in Washington State in 1997. Dietrich had been in the area at the time of Danny's disappearance, and forensic evidence suggested he may have been responsible for this case as well. On December 3, 2023, Carl Dietrich was formally charged with the murder of Tyler Brennan. He was also charged in connection with the disappearance of Danny Rodriguez, although that case required cooperation between Oregon and Washington law enforcement agencies. The charges against Dietrich were based on a combination of evidence. His confession, photographic evidence from Tyler's camera, forensic evidence of the remains, and DNA evidence that placed him at the crime scene. The case against him was considered extremely strong by prosecutors. For the Brennan family, the resolution of Tyler's case brought a mixture of relief and newfound grief. Although they finally had answers about what happened to their son, the details of his final hours were more disturbing than they ever could have imagined. Linda Brennan, now 63, said, "We always hoped that Tyler was out there somewhere, maybe living with someone who took him but cared for him. It's devastating to learn the truth, but at least we finally know what happened to our boy." The case also highlighted the importance of never giving up on missing persons investigations. The discovery of Tyler's backpack after 25 years demonstrated that even the oldest cold cases could potentially be solved through persistence and advances in forensic technology. Carl Dietrich pleaded guilty to Tyler's murder on February 14, 2024, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He also provided information that led to the discovery of Danny Rodriguez's remains, bringing closure to another family that had waited decades for answers. The Tyler Brennan case was a landmark in Oregon law enforcement, demonstrating the value of preserving cold case files and the importance of advances in forensic science. It also served as a reminder that predators can hide in plain sight, looking like ordinary people but harboring dark secrets. For the Clearwater campground community, the resolution of Tyler's case marked the end of 25 years of speculation and fear. The campground, forever changed by Tyler's disappearance, could finally begin to heal from the tragedy that had defined it for so many years.